Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Fall is in the Air by Kimberly Thomas, narrated by Faye. Chapter 1, 23 years ago. Ring.
Hello?
Daddy, I messed up, Daddy.
Sweetie, where are you?
Kerry looked up at the neon sign that read, Happy Stay Motel and Apartments. I'm in Texas. She spoke into the phone, wiping her face with the back of her hand as her tears flowed unhindered. She'd been sitting on the paved walkway that led up to the motel's lobby entrance since her shift ended at the diner an hour ago. After much contemplation, she decided to call her father after ruling out trying to convince the motel manager to give her a day or two to come up with the rent. "Luke, is that Kerry? Where is she?" she heard her mother ask in the background. There was a short pause before her mother's voice rang through. "You have to go get her."
Maria, please, Luke cautioned his wife. Are you coming home, sweetie?
He asked, this time directing it to Kerry. "I can't," Kerry whispered, her voice breaking. She tightened her fingers around the cell phone she'd used her last paycheck to get.
Do you want me to come and get you?
Her father asked calmly. Can you? She replied timidly.
Of course I will, he affirmed. Kerry?
Yes, Daddy?
I love you.
I love you too, Daddy, she choked out past the lump that formed in her throat.
I'll see you soon.
Okay, Daddy. Kerry slowly brought the phone down from her ear as tears blurred her vision. She couldn't believe this was how her life turned out. She hadn't been the straight-A, goody-two-shoes child growing up, but nothing she did ever compared to what she'd gotten herself into now. Here she was, sitting outside the complex she'd called home for the past 6 months. Not by choice, but because of her boyfriend. After 3 months of being on the road with him, she'd left everything behind, only to be dumped like yesterday's news. Her eyes became a dam as her mind traveled back to the day he broke her heart.
Care Bear, this isn't working out.
What do you mean?
Us. It's just not working anymore,
her boyfriend expressed, pointing from her to him.
The relationship has run its course.
That's not funny, Mark. Why are you saying that? Her boyfriend stared back at her, unsmiling, his eyes void of the admiration they usually directed at her. Why are you doing this? She asked. The silence was deafening. Her legs moved her until she was standing before him. Kerry looked deeply into his eyes. Why are you doing this? She repeated. Her hands came up to beat against his leather-clad chest. Why? Why are you doing this? She gritted her teeth as she pounded on him. After a few blows from her hands, Mark sighed, then held her wrists.
It's not you, Kerry.
Don't you dare say it's a me thing, she threatened. Mark released her wrists and walked to the rear of the caravan he and his band had been traveling in.
Kerry, you're a nice girl, and what we had was special. But this life is not for you. Later down the road, you're going to realize I did you a favor by letting you go.
Did I ask you to do me a favor? She screamed, tears falling down her heated face. Do you have any idea how much I gave up for you, Mark? Huh? In my final year of high school, I had parents who loved me and would do anything for me. Siblings. And I gave that all up for you, and now you're dumping me for my own good? Kerry paced the small kitchenette frantically, trying to make sense of it all. Why didn't you think about how this would affect me before I threw away my life for you?
And there we have it.
Mark smirked, clapping his hands mockingly.
I didn't have to wait for a few more months, or even a year for you to say that, but it's definitely what's in the back of your mind,
he said accusingly. When she didn't say anything, but looked back at him as her chest rose and fell rapidly, he continued.
Poor Kerry threw her life away to support her boyfriend and following his dreams. Just admit that this wasn't the life you planned for.
Of course this wasn't the life I planned for, she seethed, hugging her chest tightly. But my dreams changed because I loved you. I thought you would have loved me enough not to break up with me after I dropped everything to be with you for the past 3 months.
Mark sighed. Look, I'm sorry that it had to end like this, but better now than later down the road when you've got too much invested in this and it's even harder to walk away. He reasoned. I'll give you money to go back to Oak Harbor. You have great parents. I'm sure they'll be thrilled that you came home.
Kerry looked at Mark as if he'd grown another head. Keep your money, she spat, moving around the small space, taking up the few items she'd brought with her and stuffing them into her duffel bag. I made the decision to come here. I'll find my way home without your help.
Oh, come on, Kerry. Just take the money and go home. Don't make this harder than it has to be, he implored her.
I'm not making anything harder. I'm simply taking my things and leaving. She spoke airily, moving toward the exit.
Kerry, don't do this.
He tried to reason, walking behind her, but she ignored him. She opened the door to see his bandmates stationed by it, trying to maintain a poker face. Excuse me, she said simply, then rushed by them. She walked out to the road, and luck would have it that a taxi was coming right at that time.
Where you headed?
The female driver asked her after stopping from her signaling. To town, Kerry replied vaguely.
All right, hop in,
the woman welcomed. Kerry thanked the woman and stepped up into the taxi, while ignoring Mark, who was pleading with her to let him help her get home.
Trouble in paradise?
The woman asked, looking back at Mark as she pulled away. What paradise? That was the last day she'd seen him. A few weeks later, she received the shock of her life. Kerry slowly stood and ambled in the direction of the room she currently occupied. She prayed that John, the manager, was too busy to catch her sneaking in. She breathed a sigh of relief when she put the key in the lock, which turned effortlessly. She slipped into the room and turned on the light, releasing another relieved breath. Going to the bathroom, she removed her waitress uniform and stepped into the shower. Kerry allowed the warm water to run over her hair, her shoulders, and the rest of her body. She lifted her face to the warm water and breathed deeply as it washed away the saltiness from her cheeks. This was the first in a long time she'd felt any kind of hope that everything would be okay. She allowed herself to stay in the shower a little longer, in the warm cocoon of the steam. Her father was coming tomorrow. The next day, Kerry hugged her hands across her stomach, bringing the baggy sweater she wore in closer contact with her skin. She'd been at the airport for over an hour waiting for her father's arrival. Dad, she breathed out the minute she saw him emerge from the terminal gate. Luke spotted his daughter, and his footsteps faltered as he stared back at her, his eyes bright and cautious, as if he expected her to disappear at any minute. Hi, baby girl, he spoke softly when he finally stood before her. Hi, Daddy, she replied, tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't realized how much she truly missed her family, but having her father standing before her made her both happy and homesick. Luke reached out with both hands, and Kerry flew into his arms as a flood of tears erupted, unbridled. I missed you, Daddy, she said into his chest, her words coming out stifled. I missed you too, her father sighed sadly. Let's go pick up your things so we can leave, he suggested after they parted. Kerry widened her eyes before they shuttered, and she stared down at her entwined fingers. I can't, she replied. Luke squinted as his brows furrowed in confusion. Why not? Because... She folded her arms over her stomach. She was at a loss for words to explain it, but the sudden sharp intake of breath told her she didn't need to say the words. Kerry braved to look up at her father, whose eyes were directed at a different angle, staring unblinkingly. Can we go to my place? She asked, fidgeting and pulling the sweater down further, as if that could help the situation. Her father followed her wordlessly outside the airport.
"How did you get here?"
she heard him ask from behind her, when it was evident she didn't have a car. "I walked," she replied timidly. Her father didn't say anything more, but instead moved in front of her and hailed one of the waiting cabs. After ushering her into the back seat, he got in after her. Kerry gave the driver her address, and he pulled away from the curb. For the remainder of the 20-minute drive, neither of them tried to get in another word, which only put Kerry on edge as she anticipated the incoming argument. She'd glimpsed the disappointment in his eyes that were currently eating away at her like a spider inching closer and closer to its intended meal caught in its web. She wished the earth would just open and eat her whole. When they made it to the apartment, her father paid the driver and retrieved his luggage. Kerry's heart plunged to the bottom of her chest when she saw John standing at her door, arms folded over each other as he waited for her.
"Miss Hamilton, this is your last warning. Either you pay the money you owe by the end of today, or you're out."
The man spoke sternly the minute she was in earshot. "I know, John. I'm sorry. I'm working on it," she promised.
"How much does she owe?"
she heard her father ask.
$450,
John answered. She turned to see her father counting out the bills before handing them to the manager.
"This should cover it."
The man nodded in appreciation and walked off in the other direction. Kerry turned and opened the door, allowing her father to enter. She kept her eyes averted, waiting. She could feel her father's gaze on her, but she couldn't bring herself to look.
"How far along are you?"
he asked, breaking the silence. Automatically, her hand went to touch her stomach. 7.5 months, she replied, keeping her head down.
"And the father?"
"We broke up 6 months ago."
"Does he know?"
Kerry shook her head no. Her father released a long, exaggerated breath before he started pacing back and forth across the carpeted floor. When she didn't hear him moving anymore, she risked a glance, only to be caught by his blue eyes looking back at her, disappointment written on his face. The weight of the stare caused her to hang her head in shame.
"You need to call him and let him know that he'll be a father soon,"
he spoke in a leveled voice. "I can't," Kerry replied, her voice quivering.
"Kerry Ann Elizabeth Hamilton, I raised you better than this. You got yourself in this mess, but it wasn't created by yourself only. And now an innocent child is about to come into the world. Call the father,"
her father commanded in a no-nonsense voice. Kerry went for the cell phone on the dresser charging and dialed the number that she still knew so well. Her ex-boyfriend picked up on the second ring.
"Hello?"
"Hi, Mark. It's me, Kerry."
"Kerry? Wow, I never thought I'd hear from you again,"
he mused. "Neither did I," she replied, looking over at her father, who had his arms folded over his chest, watching her.
"To what do I owe the pleasure, then?"
"Well, the thing is, I'm pregnant, and it's yours." Chapter 2. Present Day. "Anne, can you please check the ovens timer and tell me how long before the cupcakes are ready?" "Sure thing, boss." Kerry stood by the stainless steel prep table, creaming the butter and sugar in a deep bowl. Satisfied with the consistency of the batter, she reached for the small dish that contained the eggs she needed and began adding them one yolk at a time, folding them into the mixture. 15 minutes, her employee informed her as she started adding and stirring in the dry ingredients. "Great, we're right on schedule," she responded, satisfied. She'd been commissioned to bake a birthday cake and cupcakes for a Sweet 16 birthday party that she'd been about to turn down because she hadn't gotten ample notice to prepare it. However, when she saw how distraught the girl and her mother were, her heart gave way, and she decided to do it. Now, here she was at her shop, way past her closing hours, baking for a party the next morning. "You know, if you want to leave, you can go. It's fine," she suggested to the older woman, prepping the cake tins at the moment. "I'm fine," Anne assured her. "Besides, what kind of second would I be if I left you alone in your dire hour of need? Granted, you need to learn to say no sometimes." Kerry chuckled. "I've got to take a page out of your book, Anne." "That you should do," Anne replied. "Makes no sense you take on more than you can manage. You'll burn yourself right out," she warned. When she was finished with the tins, she walked over to the microwave. Kerry looked down worriedly at the woman's banded left knee. She'd been diagnosed with arthritis, but was adamant she wouldn't let sickness slow her down. "Why don't you sit for a while? I'll get the butter," she offered. Anne waved dismissively. "It's fine. I'm already there anyhow." "Okay," Kerry relented, turning her attention to the batter. After a few more mixes, she was satisfied with the consistency. She brought the cake tins closer and began pouring even amounts into each. She looked over to see Anne creaming the butter and sugar to make the frosting to top the cupcakes. The timer went off, indicating that the cupcakes were done. Kerry slipped her hands into the mittens before opening the industrial oven. The heat from the caverns rushed out to blast her in the face. She removed the trays and placed them on the counter before resetting the timer and slipping in the cake tins. Her cell phone vibrated in her pocket, and she straightened to retrieve it. "Hello?" "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetie," Kerry replied, a smile brightening her face at her daughter's voice. "How are you? How's school? Anything interesting to tell me?" "Mom, one question at a time," her daughter laughed. "I swear, every time I call, it's literally 21 questions, as if we didn't just go over the same topics a few days before." Her daughter continued to chuckle. "A lot can happen in a few days," Kerry said with a smile, happy to know that despite her many questions, her daughter didn't view it as an invasion of privacy. "All right, so my answers are, I'm fine, school's great, and no, nothing interesting has happened since we last spoke, and that includes boys." It was Kerry's turn to chuckle at the last part of her daughter's response. "You know me so well." "Like the back of my hand," her daughter replied. "I was calling to tell you I'm coming home after midterms. It feels like I've been at school forever, even though it's fall and the term just started." Kerry grinned appreciatively at her daughter's news. "I'm looking forward to seeing you too, sweetie. You don't know how much I miss you already." "I know, Mom," her daughter snickered. "Hey," Kerry responded in an offended tone. "Love you, Mom." Kerry smiled again. "And I love you, my star. Just remember not to work yourself to a nervous breakdown. No matter what happens, I'll always support you. Do your best. I'm already proud of you." "I know, Mom," Sophia replied after a short pause. Her mind flashed to her tenuous relationship with her parents in the latter years of her teens. Though they were on good terms now, there was a time when they couldn't see eye to eye, and they didn't support her choices, which ultimately led to her making some life-altering decisions that still affected her to this day. Since the day each of her daughters was born, she'd decided that she wouldn't make the same mistake she believed her father had made with her. "I love you, sweetie," she spoke with much feeling. "I know, Mom. I love you too." After a few seconds of emotional silence, Kerry asked, "Have you heard from your sister?" Yeah. She video called me 2 days ago to show me that she was at Les Catacombes de Paris." Kerry laughed at her daughter's pronunciation of the word. "So she's in France, then?" "Yep," Sophia replied, popping the pea. "Well, here's to hoping she'll remember she has a mother. Maybe she'll call me soon," Kerry replied, her tone dry. "You know that's how she is, Mom. She'll call you." "I suppose you're right." She wanted to give her children the freedom to make their own choices and mistakes. She wanted them to chart their own courses, unlike how it had been for her for a good period of her adult life. But occasionally she wondered if she had given Emma a little too much freedom to do so. She guessed time would tell. "Mom, I gotta go. I'll talk to you soon." "Okay, sweetie. Be safe." "Always." The two ended the call, and Kerry returned to finishing her baking. She and Anne didn't leave the shop until after 10 that night. When she got home, she quickly rinsed off and donned her pajamas. She fell into her bed, bone-tired. The following morning, Kerry went for a run before heading to her bakery. Leaving her apartment complex on Crosby Avenue, she headed for North Oak Harbor Street, then turned onto Northeast 10th Avenue, keeping a steady pace. She relished these early morning runs. She was out before the sun was ready to peep out from its hiding place behind the mountains, and back home before it shone in all its glory overhead. Kerry's feet made contact with the concrete pavement, pushing her forward. She breathed in deeply, filling her lungs with much-needed oxygen, and releasing the toxic air that had built up periodically. She loved the cool air dancing across her face. It felt exhilarating as she powered down the straight. As pre-dawn gave rise to the first rays of sunshine, she turned in the direction of home. The Cascade Mountain Range stood before her, separated in the distance by a wall of tall evergreens, great oaks, and water so transparent it made the mountain itself seem as if it was rising out from it. It brought attention to its magnificent ridged rock face scattered with trees and low shrubs. She took in the ice-capped tips that blended in with the fluffy clouds that clung to its peaks. Oak Harbor had some glorious sights to tantalize the senses. It was truly a wonderful place to live. As much as she'd been the adventurous type and was trying to return to that side, she loved the pace of the little coastal town. After her run, Kerry took a shower and donned a blue floral-printed dress that stopped at her knees and flared. She brushed her platinum blonde pixie cut back so the strands fell behind the curves of her ears, the length not putting it further than just above the lobes. She inserted 2 gold knobs in each ear and selected a pair of flat silver strap sandals before heading for the door. After removing her key from the hanger by the door, she exited her unit and took the 1 flight of stairs down to the lobby.
"Good morning, Miss Hamilton."
"Good morning, Geoffrey. How are you?" She greeted the concierge, who had a welcoming, radiant smile plastered on his lips.
"I'm fine, Miss Hamilton."
Kerry gave him a smile of understanding before heading for the exit. When she made it to her red and white Mini Cooper, she entered the vehicle and drove down Main Street, heading onto the I-20. 5 minutes later, she was at the intersection of Midway Boulevard and Goldie Road, and 2 seconds later, she was pulling up to her bakery. Above the red and white awning that arched over the front of the single-story red brick building was the sign in bold confetti colors, "Heavenly Treats, her baby." She took a few minutes admiring what 17 years of marriage and a divorce settlement had gotten her. Most of the outer brick wall was covered by Boston ivy and honeysuckle blossoms. Wide paneled glass windows gave a limited view of all the treats on the inside, already out in full display. If that wasn't enough, the scent of cinnamon, nutmeg, and the other spices that were key ingredients in most baked goods floated in the air. They tickled her nostrils with their tantalizing aroma, an indication that Anne was already there baking. It may not have looked like much to others, but to her, it was everything. She walked down the path marked by her potted plants to push the glass door open and step into the bakery. She rounded the counter and pushed open the iron door that led to the kitchen. Anne stood by the counter, kneading dough. "Why is it that no matter how hard I try, you're always here before me?" Kerry asked the woman, as she reached for the apron from the top drawer of the small chest in the corner, furthest away from the heat. "That's because I'm psychic," Anne replied, shrugging. She didn't bother to look up from what she was doing, but Kerry could see the corners of her mouth tilted in a smile, or a smirk. She wasn't sure. "Mark my words, Anne, I will beat you to it one day," she promised. "You can try," the older woman replied, the challenge evident in her tone. "I would love to see the day that you actually get here before me." Kerry rolled her eyes playfully. "Don't get overly confident now, Anne. You might just live to eat your words," she parlayed. She washed her hands and went to the refrigerator to remove the icing and fruit she would add to the cake for the birthday party. She'd already layered it, so the only thing left was to decorate it. The chiming of the bell at the front caught her attention. "I'll go," she informed Anne, who was straightening up to do the same. The woman nodded and returned to flattening the dough to cut it into rollable portions. "Welcome to Heavenly Tree— Faith? What's wrong?" she asked the petite woman who owned the toy store 2 shops away from hers, standing by the counter looking perturbed. "This," the woman replied, waving what looked like a flyer. Kerry took it from her and read the content, her eyes widening as she realized what it was saying. "Where did you get this?" she asked the woman, alarm sounding in her voice. "It's posted on every notice board around town." "These people won't quit," she responded, her annoyance evident. She looked back at the flyer inviting the small business owners to a town hall meeting by the investors of Major Corp to sensitize the populace on their aim to acquire their businesses, tear them down, and build something foreign to the area. She would go to the town hall meeting, all right, but it was to tear into them for trying to force the sale down their throats. Chapter 3.
All you big shot companies are doing is coming into town and destroying it with your conglomerates. Pretty soon the town will lose its authenticity, and I'm not for it.
There were shouts of approval from the other business owners and residents that turned out for the town hall meeting at the Oak Harbor Conference Center downtown. The man who'd spoken held up his fist as an act of defiance before taking his seat. One of the men sitting on the podium rose to his feet and brushed down his suit before standing in front of the mic.
Residents of Oak Harbor, we at Major Corp believe fully in community development. It is not our intention to work against you, but rather with you.
The man held up his hand, requesting that the people that had started to murmur let him finish. Kerry sat at the back with her arms folded over her chest as she listened carefully to what the suits had to present.
We do intend to build a shopping mall and conjoining parking lot, but we do plan on incorporating green spaces in our design to better cater for families.
Kerry rolled her eyes. She knew what that meant. Usually a mini golf park or flower garden that did nothing to the interest of the people.
Let's face it, the town is dying. Young people are leaving in droves to find better opportunities elsewhere. The town's GDP is below most towns that are its size. Pretty soon other companies will come in and want to build where your shops are, and they won't be so caring about your interests.
Again, Kerry rolled her eyes, her annoyance almost at peak level. The murmurs of the people began to drown out what the man was saying.
If you allow us to buy your shops at a price that will benefit you, at least what we're building will bring back jobs to the community and help alleviate brain drain.
Again, there was a great uproar from the residents. Kerry decided that she'd heard enough, stood, and waited for the noise to die down.
"Yes, you in the back," the moderator pointed her out.
"What assurance do we have that you aren't shortchanging us?" she asked with her hands folded. "As far as we know, the plans that you're peddling to us are bound to change the minute the ink dries on the pieces of paper you give to us, and we, as the residents of Oak Harbor, are left with nothing."
"Ma'am, we understand your concern, but as I said before, we would—"
"You don't have to say anything else. I will not be selling my business, and there is no way I'm allowing you to take it. We, the citizens of Oak Harbor, are no fools, and we will not allow you to take away what we've worked hard to maintain all these years." There were cheers of approval as she turned and made her way toward the exit.
"Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you would take your seats and let us finish this meeting amicably."
Kerry looked behind her to see most of the other people had risen from their seats and were walking toward the exit as well, staging a walkout. A small triumphant smile lifted her lips. How would teach them to think that they could be bought? Realizing that she had some time on her hands, Kerry decided to visit her parents. Her dad had indicated that they would be home for the day. It was as good a time as any, as her mother had been begging her to visit for months. Stopping by the bakery she'd closed to attend the meeting, she removed the cheesecake from the refrigerator and boxed it up to take with her. 10 minutes later, she was on North Torpedo Road, and 2 minutes later, she made a left turn onto West Crescent.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?